everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Lunatics Radio Hour podcast. My name is Abby Brinker, and I am sitting here with Alan Kudan.
Hello.
And this week, I went to see a new horror movie in the theaters that I personally thought had way too many jump scares. And so today, let's talk about the history of jump scares in horror movies.
But hang on, what movie did you see?
I saw a film called Hokum that stars Adam Scott.
Was it good?
Well, there were parts of it that I liked, but generally,
No.
I thought it suffered from kind of this like incessant jump scare barrage. And listen, I think this is a controversial take. I think jump scares are polarizing. Some people love horror films, and I acknowledge that, and that's totally great and good, that have a ton of scares. That's why they go to see them. I am not one of those people, and that's, again, it's all good and relative. It's just not my thing.
I think
Yeah.
that the majority of people that say they don't like horror movies are really trying to say that they don't like jump scares.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And listen, I like a few really well-placed, thoughtful jump scares that get you and add to the plot and are, I love that. I think that is great in horror, but I don't need one every 30 seconds for an hour and a half.
No, of course not. It's a powerful tool. It's like using a vertigo shot.
Mm-hmm.
It can be incredibly impactful when done sparingly, and especially when it's done full of like misdirection. As soon as we started talking about jump scares, my mind immediately went to Jaws.
Yeah.
Which is like such a great example of how to do a jump scare correctly. I'm thinking of the time when they're diving down to the wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the Jaws music building. You know exactly when it's going to happen, and the camera's creeping in, and then it's not even the shark. It's a dead body.
Yeah.
It is a jump scare, but it's not the kind you're expecting. It makes it so impactful.
Absolutely. And there's a formula for jump scares that obviously filmmakers have figured out, right? And part of that is dipping the audio right before. But now the problem is that audience members have figured it out. And we're going to talk about this. And so I think if you're not doing something that's really relevant to the plot or surprising or additive, like when I sat in this theater and watched this movie, I knew exactly when every scare was about to happen. And I just sort of diverted my eyes a little bit, not because the effects were particularly scary, but I knew there was going to be a loud audio blast.
Yep.
And I just knew I was going to like jump a little bit, even though I knew it was coming. So I just kind of mentally prepared for each one and like looked away from the screen, which is not what the filmmakers I think really want. But that's how I sat and watched that movie for 90 minutes.
One of my biggest pet peeves about movies today is they're too loud.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel like I'm 1,000 years old, but that's fine.
Well, you are a sound expert. That's your job.
Well, that's very kind. More of a sound enthusiast.
Your job is literally you're a sound mixer.
There's been a bunch of great articles written up on like why movies are so loud and dialogue is so hard to understand, and there's all this like psychology behind it, and I hate all of it. One of the reasons why movies are so loud, they want a really, really loud dynamic range. So what that means is that the quiet sounds are quiet, the loud sounds are loud, and they want to have like a very large difference between the loudest and the quietest.
Sure.
But that said, like you're not allowed to have anything quiet in a movie theater. It's now illegal. So
what do you mean?
I'm making a joke.
Oh.
Thanks for the pity laugh.
No, I thought it was like an accessibility thing.
No, I'm sure it's all just like studio executives doing market testing, being like, well, you know what? They're having trouble understanding the dialogue. Let's make the whole thing louder.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now the dialogue is at a reasonable level. Should we bring the explosions down? Like, no, why would we bring the explosions down? They're an explosion. Okay. And now it's just like ear-splittingly loud. And we as a society decided that's acceptable. So now you just have everything louder. It's the equivalent of power creep, but for sound.
Yeah, I actually had this experience, and I totally agree. And I love going to see movies in the theater for many reasons, but one of them is because I have such a bad attention span that it's a great way for me to actually like be immersed and pay attention. But a few years ago, I went to a film festival in LA, and I went to see this like amazing screening of The Exorcist, like a 70 millimeter. I was so excited to go. It was at the Chinese Theater in LA. It was like this big cool thing. And I ended up having to walk out because it was so loud that, and I've seen The Exorcist a billion times. I don't find it to be particularly scary, but something about how loud everything was mixed was making me super anxious.
Yep. It's just mean, really.
Yeah. And like seeing certain films in like a theater, like an IMAX theater, where you're kind of like blocked in because there's so many people and it's so loud, it's just not enjoyable for me.
That's my secret. So being in a theater is really confining. You know, you are stuck with a whole bunch of randos. It's incredibly loud. It's very oppressive. Your all of your senses are saturated. If I'm committed to seeing a movie in a theater, specifically one in IMAX, and you know, we are blessed to live in New York City, home to the biggest screen in the Western Hemisphere.
That's right.
Which is the Lincoln Center IMAX. But the secret is I sit in the very last row in the center. First off, there's all the little aisles. It's just like blocks of 3 seats. So you can get in and out if you have to. The screen is so big that in the very last row, it fills your peripheral vision perfectly without having to turn your head. But the most importantly, you can just sneak out, and there's the little sneaky bathroom in the back of the theater.
Yeah, I mean, I also just get a lot of anxiety being in any kind of place where there's a ton of people, so I like to be on an aisle. The other thing is, and I totally agree, and there's a lot of like phone usage and stuff in theaters right now that sucks, but the thing that sometimes happens still, and this is another reason why I love going to a theater, is there is this community, especially when you're watching horror. And now people shouldn't be like, you know, quipping with each other in their seats, but I remember one of my best theater experiences that I ever had was watching the film Get Out in a theater, because by the end, everybody in that theater was like, holy shit. Like they were standing, they were cheering. Like we were like in this journey together. It felt like euphoric to kind of have that experience. I mean, conversely, there's been some other really cool experiences like that. I went to see Climax, which is like a French dance horror film a few years ago when it came out, and it was playing very sparingly. And so I had to sneak out in the middle of the workday to go see it, which meant that there was only like 2 or 3 other people there. And it was so intense that like afterwards, these 2 or 3 other people and myself like just like talked about it for a few minutes. It's
That's
like
cool.
Because we were like all there alone, and we were like, holy shit, like what did we just watch? Even the other day I saw The Drama, which was so intense, and it was another situation where there wasn't a lot of people there, but there was a little bit. I'm not going to give away anything about The Drama because I think it's worth going in pretty blind. But it's so intense that sometimes there was like a little bit of laughter, like a little bit of giggling. And it really helped to ground me and to be like, okay, it's okay to laugh at this. Like, this is a dark comedy. It's okay to like exhale. So I personally enjoy being in like a community when you're going through something like an intense horror movie. But to your point, like now it's kind of, it can be hard when it's just like the theater's full of jerks on their phones or, you know, whatever.
I mean, yeah, device use aside, if you are really invested in the film, and that's one of the beauties about going to the theater, like it's a lot easier to get very invested in the movie.
Yeah, sure.
If you're really invested and others are not,
yeah,
that can be just the worst.
Yeah.
I remember it was one of the modern Godzilla releases. I'm getting a little emotional. This was not Godzilla -1.
Okay.
And others are just like laughing, and it's not funny. It's emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not taking it seriously. They're not treating it with the appropriate reverence. And I'm appalled.
You should have handed out your card to them after, Godzilla expert. And I'll explain to you why this is so meaningful.
Okay, but we digress. So we're talking about jump scares.
Today we're talking about jump scares.
Jump scares are particularly impactful in a theater because you're locked in and the screen is so big and it's so loud. And the whole thing about a jump scare is that it's a sensory overload, and you're in a sensory overload situation already. So it's really intense.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to sound like a hater. I love a well-timed, amazing jump scare. You kind of get this like giddy feeling after it. You know, it's like a roller. It's like an adrenaline burst. I love it. I just don't love films that are reliant on it because I don't like to live in a state of fear for an hour and a half. But let's get into it. Let's talk about our sources. There's a Collider article, A Brief History of the Jump Scare by Samantha Graves, an Inverse article, The Unexpected Psychology of Jump Scares by Ben Garino, An article from The Lineup by Kelsey Christine McConnell, The Hair-Raising History of the Jump Scare. And finally, an Atlas Obscura article by Gavia Baker Whitelaw, The Startling History of the Jump Scare.
Okay, I got a question for you.
Yeah, tell me.
Do you have a favorite jump scare?
I do.
Actually, let me rephrase.
Most memorable for me is When a Stranger Calls, and favorite is Carrie.
I don't remember either of those.
Well, we're going to talk about it. Tell me yours, though. What film?
The face in the closet in The Ring.
Oh, there's actually 2 moments in The Ring that I want to talk about with you, so I'm glad that you brought that up. We're going to get back to it. A jump scare is a horror technique designed to startle an audience by building tension and then suddenly interrupting it with a loud sound, sudden movement, or unexpected visual. It typically relies on surprise rather than explanation, triggering a quick physical reaction such as flinching or jumping, or in some cases, screaming. The first jump scare in cinema is often thought to be from the 1942 horror film Cat People.
Cat People?
It's a really masterful scene. It's on YouTube. If you just type in like Cat People jump scare, it's fun. I watched it obviously in preparation for this.
This is one of the first movies we watched together.
Yeah, I fell asleep, so I don't think I got to this point when we watched it together.
I don't remember this being a scary movie.
Well, it's from 1942, so I think like take it with a grain of salt. It's definitely an aged jump scare by today's standards, but at the time, it made the audience like jump in their seat.
Kind of like the Great Train Robbery. Everyone jumped out of their seats.
Yeah, exactly. So a woman is walking home at night and she realizes that somebody is following her. So we kind of cut back and forth between the pursued and the pursuer as the tension builds. The characters keep sort of disappearing and reappearing as they pass through streetlights. And just when we think she's about to kind of turn around and face her pursuer and everything builds, she turns and sees nothing. But seconds later, a bus like barrels up to where she's standing, and with this very loud noise.
Hyonk hyonk.
That is the scare.
That was the sound, yeah.
There's a formula we're going to talk about a lot today with jump scares where typically there's, kind of like a building soundtrack, building noise, and then there's a beat of silence right before something loud, right, to kind of make that thing feel louder.
I will say that jump scares have become so ubiquitous in everything.
Yeah.
In horror movies, but any movie that just like honestly like wants a cheap thrill.
Yeah.
That audiences 100% expect them now.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're seeing it more and more of people subverting that formula just to make people even more unsettled. And I love it.
Yeah.
One thing that I notice all the time is when there's negative space on screen because there's enough space for the character to enter.
Oh, I'm looking through my fingers if there's negative space on screen.
And I love that. Well, I mean, there's simultaneously the push of cinematographers to just, be more wacky and wild and do unconventional framing.
Yeah.
And so often things are just being framed weird, but sometimes they're just framing it deliberately as if the thing is going to jump out there, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, it's kind of cool.
I agree. It's like, okay, stick with me with this. But Survivor, right? The show Survivor.
With Jeff Probst?
Exactly. So Survivor, when it first started, was so simple, right? And it was like literally, how do we survive?
Yeah, Richard won season 1.
And then it's become now so like metagamey, like because everybody has grown up watching Survivor and there's all these extra mini games and idols and whatever and all this stuff. And it's become so complicated that now I feel like the game makers are trying to figure out how to surprise the game players because they're all such like masters of Survivor. I feel like that's kind of the same thing here. It's like horror fans are so rabid that it's like, how can horror filmmakers technically with sound and with visuals specifically subvert and surprise people still when we all know the formulas so well?
I was thinking about this yesterday because you and I were working on a new script.
Yes.
And I kept thinking about like, well, if we do this, that's too similar to this thing, or this doesn't really push these boundaries. And then I realized it doesn't matter at all. Like, even if you keep the same formula, use the same stuff, just shuffle the order around a little bit. It's still really fun. All you have to do is make it your own in some way.
Yeah.
You don't have to make every single thing different.
I think that's totally right. It's like it's like more about the feeling you want the audience to have while they're watching the thing you're making.
Yep.
And if you can feel confident about the feeling it's going to evoke in some ways, then I think then you've won.
And I know this is like a really foreign concept to, most Hollywood executives, but you don't need your movie to be super gimmicky if you just have good writing.
Exactly.
Some good characters, some good dialogue. Even if the plot is a bit predictable,
yeah,
if you're emotionally invested, everyone's there with you.
And that's kind of how I feel. I'm not going to give any spoilers about Hokum because it's so new, but that's kind of like my general takeaway is that I feel like it had good bones and there was plot elements that could have been fleshed out to be really interesting and the characters could have been made much more sympathetic. But because I feel like so much relied on the scares and so much honestly just like screen time went into these scares that it didn't leave enough time for us to fall in love with the story at all or to at least be interested that much in the story, where I think there was some really good scares and some really good plot points. It just needed to like it just needed to win us over a little bit more first. But anyway, back to Cat People from 1942. So reportedly, audiences at the time jumped. They were super surprised by this loud noise of the bus. I'm going to quote from the Collider article by Samantha Graves, quote, "This specific type of jump scare is known as the Lewton Bus and is named after the film's producer, Val Lewton. A Lewton Bus scare is when viewers are scared by something completely harmless, such as a cat jumping out of a cupboard, or, in the case of Cat People, a bus coming screeching into the frame. It isn't just the Lewton Bus that is a branch of the jump scare, though. There's also the mirror effect. The mirror effect is used when someone or something shows up behind a character in a mirror and was first used in the 1965 film Repulsion," end quote.
I mean, I was going to bring up the mirror earlier. Like, that is probably the most overused jump scare in the history of jump scares.
Yeah. We've used it even.
Yeah, we are responsible.
And the great news is that because the movie is in the public domain, Cat People that is, we can release the clip on social media so you can see the jump scare we're talking about. So I'm actually really excited because I've had so much fun kind of thinking through my brain of all of my favorite jump scares. So we have some cool lists coming out on social media this week, and I'm going to release the clip. There might be more that are in the public domain, but at least the Cat People clip so you guys can watch it there really easily. If you don't follow us on the Lunatics Project anywhere on social media. There are a few films that predate Cat People that are relevant to talk about. And while I wouldn't call these moments specifically jump scares, I think they're sort of precursors. First, The Phantom of the Opera from 1925 is a silent movie. So the scares relied entirely on visuals, right? So that's interesting, a jump scare from the silent era.
Most people don't know this, but the 1925 Phantom of the Opera was not an original work. It was based on an Iron Maiden song.
That's right. Good job, Alan. The funny thing is the history of the Phantom of the Opera, because it's based on some real events, is our #1 listened to episode on this podcast.
Why?
Because I made a social video on it and it went viral.
Yeah, but you make social videos on like all this garbage.
Yeah, sometimes lightning strikes the bottle, as they say.
As they say.
So the sudden reveal of the Phantom's face shocked audiences at the time and reportedly even caused some viewers to faint. Unlike the later 2004 adaptation starring Gerard Butler, which showed a less severe facial disfigurement, the 1925 version revealed a much more disturbing appearance.
There's a 2004 Phantom of the Opera?
There are so many Phantom of the Opera movies. There are endless.
Isn't Gerard Butler the guy from 300?
He is, yes.
So King Leonidas played this deformed guy.
Yeah.
Wow. It's exciting.
He's an actor. He's got range.
I mean, if anyone has range, it's Gerard Butler.
Actor Lon Chaney created the makeup in the 1925 version and designed it himself, giving the Phantom a skeletal and heavily deformed look that became one of the most famous images in early horror cinema.
Lon Chaney was a very versed guy.
It's like Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi, and Boris Karloff are kind of like the three guys of early like monster. And they did, I think, and maybe this is worth doing more of an episode on someday, but I think they did a lot of their own effects and makeup themselves.
Which, I mean, honestly, it's really impressive. It's not uncommon for a director to also be the cinematographer or something like that.
Yeah.
But like the main actor to also be in charge of the special effects at such a tier is really impressive.
Yeah, that's like a Lunatics budget movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they shot their entire movie in one afternoon for the price of pizza.
That's right. Another early example of a jump scare is from Citizen Kane. While it was not designed as a horror scare, Citizen Kane includes a sudden transition near the end of the movie, featuring a loud screeching cockatoo. Director Orson Welles later explained that the moment was included to surprise audience members and wake up anyone who may have been losing attention near the end of the movie.
It's so dumb.
Have you seen do
Yes,
you know the moment?
Of course. It's so dumb. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
There are few moments where I'm like, you know what? I think a studio exec should have stepped in and said, hey, Mr. Crazy Director, I don't think this is the right call. And in fact, I'm going to shut it down. But instead, no.
Wow, you really didn't like it that much.
No, it's dumb. It makes no sense. And everyone's like, what? Why? Why did that happen? And the whole reason is like, Orson Welles like, here it comes. Here. Got him.
I mean, that's what all of horror is, right? It's like the filmmakers playing with the audience.
No. I mean, yes, but Citizen Kane is not a horror movie.
Sure.
The jump scare is the most out of place thing imaginable.
You're just mad because it woke you up at NYU while you were sleeping in the back of the screening.
It's like the early 2000s internet videos where the volume on the clip would be like super low, so you crank the volume like crazy, and then all of a sudden like the big scary face of
we're gonna get there
from The Exorcist.
Do you know there's a name for those? I learned that.
No, what is it?
I also learned while I was researching this that this happened to me one time.
The hell, that makes no sense.
I was in a Zoom call. I was like presenting in a Zoom call. Somebody joined and had like this weird, it was like a Jigsaw, like sort of, or Jigsaw's puppet, whatever, Billy the Puppet, like image, because it was like an open, meetup thing. And it had this loud noise associated with it. And at the time I didn't know what it was. And now I know. It was this thing. It was like this troll.
And that was the start of adding passwords to Zoom calls.
That's right. Another classic example is the scene from The Thing from Another World from 1951. So this is a film we talked about a lot in our snow horror series because it's a precursor for The Thing. There's a famous scene where the men are searching for the monster and open up a door to reveal him. Again, another example of an early jump scare that jolted audiences in their seats. During the 1960s, filmmakers experimented with jump scares. Alfred Hitchcock helped make the technique popular with Psycho. The movie includes several famous scare scenes, including the shower murder and the reveal of Mrs. Bates. But one of the most effective examples in Psycho is a jump scare around the death of Detective Arbogast. As he walks through the Bates house, the scene stays calm and quiet until he suddenly reaches the top of the stairs, and there's this kind of like beautiful overhead shot, and Norman Bates appears with a knife. The sudden camera change and the loud music make the moment especially shocking for audiences. And of course, the music in Psycho does so much to evoke scares from the audience because it's so like loud and bursty,
Also, spoiler alert about it being Norman Bates.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of these movies are from like 80 years ago, 60 years ago. Okay, we're going to talk about them. Other films in the 1960s also introduced new types of jump scares. Repulsion, which we talked about, helped popularize the mirror scene, where a character unexpectedly appears in a reflection behind someone, a technique that has been replicated in countless horror movies. Some of my favorite include A Nightmare on Elm Street, Candyman, and Oculus. Wait Until Dawn used darkness and limited visibility to increase tension. These techniques worked because audiences naturally feel more uneasy when characters can't clearly see what's around them, making sudden scares more intense. But now we're going to talk about, this is one that we referenced at the beginning, one of my favorite jump scares of all time. And I'm going to preface talking about this by saying, this is a film from the 70s. I've watched it in like a sort of a theater setting because I watched it as part of a class I took in film school about Brian De Palma's filmmaking. And so I did sort of see this in a big enough screen with a loud enough speaker system that it got me.
What movie?
Brian De Palma's Carrie was released in 1976, and with it came the mainstream use of the jump scare. What I love about this is that this is like the last shot in the movie, and there's no other jump scares. So it's near the end of Carrie. Sue slowly approaches Carrie's grave and leaves flowers at the grave in what seems like this very calm, peaceful, healing closing scene. Without warning, Carrie's blood-covered hand suddenly shoots out of the ground and grabs her. The movie then cuts to Sue waking up screaming from the nightmare. The scene became one of the most influential jump scares in horror because it hit audiences after the story appeared to be over. Its success helped inspire later horror filmmakers, such as Tobe Hooper, Sam Raimi, and George A. Romero, to use bigger and more intense shock moments in their own movies. And of course, the rise of the slasher subgenre brought with it a steep incline in jump scares. The 1979 film When a Stranger Calls, which we just talked about quite a bit in a recent episode, uses a jump scare technique where the antagonist's location is suddenly revealed to both the main character and the audience.
He's in the house.
Film writer William Chang describes this moment as removing the sense of safety around the protagonist, which makes the threat feel closer and more immediate to the viewer as well. The 1980 film The Shining uses what are often described as misplaced jump scares, where ordinary or routine moments are paired with sudden, intense music cues, sometimes called stings. Kubrick uses this technique to break expectations so that simple events feel tense or alarming because of the audio buildup and abrupt sound crash. Examples include a title card that simply says Tuesday and a moment where Jack Torrance removes a page from a typewriter, both emphasized by sudden musical stings that create surprise without a traditional horror effect, right? It's not like you're seeing a ghost. It's just that he's kind of scaring you in the mundane to put you on edge.
Yeah. And it does. It makes you unsettled.
It does. And so when creepy shit starts happening later, you're kind of, and we're going to talk in a little bit about the psychology of all of this, but you're kind of more prone to being freaked out by it because you know something is coming.
Yeah, your body's already flooded with cortisol.
Yeah, you're tense. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, slashers like Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, the big three as I like to call them, began building entire sequences around suspense and payoff. Directors stretched tension through stalking scenes, point-of-view shots, silence, and fake-outs before delivering sudden attacks, musical stings, or the abrupt appearance of the killer. Filmmakers wanted to scare audiences. That was the point. That's why people were coming to see these types of movies, right? And so this, I think it's an interesting kind of moment to pause on because when we say horror, it's such a blanket term, right? In this episode, we are talking about everything from Psycho and Alfred Hitchcock to Cat People to Halloween to, Candyman. Like there's such a range of style within all of those films.
Do you remember Critters?
Vaguely, yeah.
The little aliens.
Little cuties, yeah.
That would roll around and then get bigger and dangerous.
Yeah.
That was a good movie.
Yeah. Why are you talking about it?
I was just thinking about it.
Yeah, sure. But anyway, the point is, by this point, when slashers are becoming so popular in the late 70s and 80s, people are going to those types of horror movies for different reasons than they're going to, like, an Alfred Hitchcock movie, right? It's a different sort of type of horror. And so I think there's an expectation in a lot of these slasher films to be scarier, to be over the top, which I love. I love that, but it's a different thing. Viewers knew something terrible was coming. They didn't know exactly when. They liked the game of anticipation, and they still do. As the slasher boom grew, jump scares became faster, louder, and more technically refined. Films in the 90s like Scream played with audiences' expectations by parodying and reinventing the formula, while 2000s supernatural horror films like The Ring and Insidious pushed jump scares into a more atmospheric style built around silence and visual unease. So there's two moments in The Ring to talk about. Alan, I want you to talk about the closet scene first.
The music builds as the character slowly moves into the closet, and they reveal the guy on the floor whose face is all twisted because he got spooked to death.
Yeah.
Is that, again, we've talked about this, but I still don't have an answer of how she kills people. You say she just like grabs them and does stuff.
Do I say that?
Yeah. You say that all the time. And I'm like, how? You say, no, she has psychic powers. And I'm like, that's crazy. She's a little girl. Just hit her.
She terrorizes people. I think she, like, in a lot of cases, people I think die of like fright or heart attack as she's coming up to them.
Yeah, but she's got a physical presence. You just hit her with a chair and you win.
So I'm on Reddit right now. It looks like there's differences between the books, the Japanese films, and the American films. In the American films, Samara uses psychic powers essentially to drive people around her crazy, right? In the Japanese films, the girl Sadako, had like psychic ability to kind of target people and kill them psychically. And then in the books, Sadako is able to kind of cause heart attacks, it seems. Maybe we should do a deep dive at some point into the world of Ringu and the Ring, because they're so, I don't know, it's like there was such a big moment when we grew up.
I agree. Yeah, you might be right. Maybe she does have all these psychic powers that you just don't really see on screen.
Because it usually, like in the Ring, I'm just thinking about the Ring, you find the victims or it cuts before, like it's not like you're usually seeing the death, right? I mean, I haven't seen this movie in a long time.
No, you never see the death.
Right, so we don't know.
But that's the thing, like if you know she's coming in 7 days,
yeah,
you wait patiently by the TV.
Yeah.
You know exactly when it's going to happen. And then just to the side of the TV is your buddy standing there with a metal folding chair. She comes out of the TV, bonk. You're safe.
I think to your point, if you know she's coming in 7 days and you know she kills by fear, just like take some deep breaths, also, like meditate.
She always comes out of the TV. Go on a retreat. Go to the woods. Get away from TVs.
She'll find you. She'll come out of the nearest TV and crawl her way through the woods.
Yeah, but if you're in the woods and there's no TV nearby,
it'll just take longer.
She's going to be crawling for a very long time.
Well, maybe she comes out quicker.
If you're at the end of a long driveway, you can just wait with all of your buddies, and they all have metal folding chairs.
It's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, that's like, cluster bonk.
Cluster bonk. Oh man. The other scene in The Ring that I want to talk about isn't really like a jump scare, but it was maybe, I don't know, there's something about it that was really horrifying, which is the moment for the first time that you realize that she comes out of the TV. And I think that like there was something about that was so hugely impactful because you weren't sure where it was going. And when she takes that, like first her hand comes through, I just feel like it's like kind of this iconic horror moment.
Very much so.
There's a shot in When a Stranger Calls from 2010 that I vividly remember made me scream out loud in the theater when I saw that movie. That was the other the other jump scare that was really memorable for me because I was in a theater with my friends and I was so embarrassed after that I had screamed out loud.
I would be too.
Modern horror often combines both approaches, the slasher's tension and release structure with psychological horror's lingering dread. What began as a simple shock technique evolved into one of horror's most recognizable tools, shaping how audiences physically experience fear in theaters. So there's actually a lot of psychology around how different audience members react to jump scares. Quoting from the Inverse article by Ben Guarino, quote, "The jump scare doesn't seem like it should work. Horror movie watchers know that someone is going to jump out. That's why they watch horror movies. But still, neural circuitry is undeniable, and the pleasure and pain of the involuntary flinch is all but unavoidable. The startle reflex is an evolutionary holdover that we share with virtually all mammals, including lab mice. What makes a jump scare work, at its core, is pretty simple. Set up a tense, lingering scene, and then break that in half with a sudden burst of motion or sound. Anything that ever evolved to avoid being eaten will flinch," end quote. Generally, filmmakers use a loud noise coupled with a scary visual to startle the audience. This tends to happen right after a period of silence or quiet sound design, and generally while tension is really high. Even when the audience knows something is coming, it doesn't mean they won't flinch when a sudden noise blasts out of nowhere. Research on the startle reflex shows that people react more intensely to sudden stimuli when they are already anxious. In laboratory settings, heightened anxiety can dramatically increase the body's startle response, sometimes by several 100%. A silly example of this is like one time I ended up having to have a heart monitor for a month because every time I would go to the doctor, I was so anxious and I would get my blood pressure taken and they were like, whoa, something's up here. So the point really of all this psychology is to say, like, even when you know that it's coming or even if you look away, your body's still going to react to it. And knowing that something is coming doesn't assuage your fears at all. It actually makes those fears and those flinches bigger. And so that's what filmmakers are playing with.
I mean, a simpler example is when someone just comes up and says, hey, and you fucking jump and, have a huge reaction. And the response is like, sorry, I'm just really on edge.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally. Conditions like post-traumatic stress can also keep people in a constant state of alertness. making them more likely to react strongly to unexpected sounds or movements, even when those triggers are not directly connected to a past traumatic event. Scientists describe the startle reflex as an extremely fast and basic survival response because the pathway between sensory input and physical reaction involves very few neural connections. The body can respond almost instantly. In humans, the process takes only about 20 milliseconds. Bracing for the jump scare only makes it worse. When you brace for the upcoming fear, you activate your amygdala. Do you remember The Conjuring, Alan? The original?
No, because they're all so boring.
Well, there's a scene...
So boring.
In the first Conjuring movie, which I think is 2013, where they're playing this clap game. And that is a jump scare that gets me even at home, which I think is worth noting. Like sometimes jump scares can be lost when you're watching it on a TV versus when you're watching in a theater. And especially to your point earlier, like when we're watching horror movies here, we're quipping, we're chatting, we're making comments. And I think it takes you out of the immersion of it. So jump scares are harder to land. But that's one that gets me no matter what.
Yeah, that's a really dumb one.
One movie that I forgive, or I guess I'm really into despite my stance on jump scares, is Paranormal Activity. I really have fun when I watch Paranormal Activity, even though the whole thing is just like a jump scare plot.
I've only seen the first one and only seen it once.
Like when it came out?
No, we watched it. Why did we watch Paranormal Activity? Maybe it was for the found footage episode, but I had never seen Paranormal Activity. So we watched it. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I thought it was going to be like very silly and kind of like for kids.
No.
But it was good.
Yeah, I remember seeing it in theaters with my friend and my parents in college while my parents were visiting. And it was such a crazy theater experience. It was so scary and everybody in the theater was so scared. But it's like one of those community moments, you know, and I don't know, like going into Paranormal Activity for some reason, I'm more interested and okay with it than other types of movies that I'm more critical of, I guess, that rely on jump scares. The Descent is a really good one for jump scares. When the creatures are like right behind them, like there's so many, like suddenly the lights come on and they're right there. You know, they light a match or whatever.
Oh, sure.
I don't know, Alan, if you're going to remember this or if you had this experience, but another one that got me at a home theater, home TV setting is Hereditary.
Is this the big naked man running?
Well, I don't know. There's so many different jump scares where she's in the corner of the room. And this one is also a film that plays a lot with like dark and light. And so sometimes there's shots where you could almost barely make out the character in the corner of the room. And that makes it so much scarier because you might miss it the first time. I
love when that happens in movies.
Yeah.
Especially like when they never draw attention to it.
Yeah.
A great example is in the movie Insidious.
I'd love to talk about this because I have actually never seen it.
It's either Insidious or Sinister. I always confuse the two movies. But anyways, there's one tracking shot that goes like you're just following a character through the house.
Yeah.
Like nothing scary is happening. I'm sorry, maybe there's like some tension, but like it's not a big horrific moment.
Yeah.
And I happen to catch it. But like again, there's no attention drawn to it. There's like the creepy boy standing in the corner in the shadows.
Yeah.
And like that's it. You move on. It's the type of thing where like if you rewatch the movie and you know the mythos, you know that like the hauntings are escalating and so there's going to be more spooky stuff. And it's like on a rewatch and you're just like watching all the shadows and finding all the Easter eggs.
Yeah.
It's like I think that's so cool. It's not a jump scare.
Yeah.
It's just a hidden in plain sight thing.
Well, the TV show version that came out, I don't know, within the last decade for Haunting on Hill House does that too. And I think sometimes it can be a jump scare because if you're not expecting it and suddenly you see like you're like, oh shit, you know, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. All right. You gift your own jump scare.
Yeah. It Follows is interesting because I think this film it's exactly what we're talking about here, where it relies less on like musical stings and more on these super wide shots where suddenly somebody in the background, you know, in the premise is like the thing follows. So suddenly someone in the background is walking and there's a bunch of people walking, but like maybe one person kind of draws the eye and it's like this gradual, it's like what we're talking about a little bit, I think, where you might not notice it right away or people are going to notice it at different times and it's not calling attention to itself until suddenly it's like, holy shit, like we got to run because this thing's right here.
Yeah, there's something really unsettling about you see something at a safe distance and then all of a sudden it locks onto you and it approaches much faster than it should.
Yeah. Yeah. Sam Raimi is very good at jump scares, especially with Drag Me to Hell.
Sure. I mean, Sam Raimi in general,
Yeah.
like if you want to just, I mean, he cut his teeth on The Evil Dead, and that whole franchise really plays with the jump scare. One of my favorite actually comes from the third one, Army of Darkness. So you have like this possessed woman laying on the ground. You can't really see her face at first, and then the camera is like right on her face. Her eyes are closed, and then like you have this guy reaching in slowly. The music is swelling. You know, the second that he grabs her, that he touches her, you know, the witch is gonna burst into life and shit's gonna happen.
Right.
And then Ash, our protagonist, just stops him right before and says, "It's a trap. Get an axe."
Yeah, it's great. I'm also thinking about Send Help, which is Sam Raimi's most recent movie, which isn't really horror, but there's still scares in it. Like that's just like his style, you know, which is fun. You know kind of what you're going to get going into a Sam Raimi movie for sure.
Except for Spider-Man.
Sure.
Like, what a departure. At first, I just rewatched the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. And first off, what a trip.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fun, especially like watching the first one and seeing his clear cinematic style mixed in with like a superhero movie. It's so... at first, it makes no sense of why he got given these, why he was asked to direct these movies, but they're so good. And he blends his own horror filmmaking techniques into this like, you know, feel good superhero movie, and it works perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love someone like a filmmaker that's very stylistic and has a certain language. And I think he's a great example of that.
Yeah, but he's not a genre director.
Right. Which is cool.
Amazing.
Yeah. But jump scares predate movies entirely. In theater, haunted attractions, magic shows, and even in literature, artists and writers have been using sudden shock after tension long before movies even existed. While these early examples did not use modern film editing or sound design, they relied on the same basic idea of anticipation followed by surprise. Ancient Greek theater sometimes used sudden reveals involving masks, unexpected appearances by gods through stage machinery, or abrupt acts of violence meant to shock the audience. Centuries later, Elizabethan revenge tragedies, such as Titus Andronicus, used surprise entrances, hidden bodies, and graphic reveals during tense scenes. These productions often emphasized spectacle and sudden violence to provoke strong audience reactions. Victorian horror theater is also worth noting. Stage adaptations of Frankenstein and various ghost stories use trapdoors, blackout effects, hidden performers, and sudden monster appearances to create startling moments. In 19th century Grand Guignol theater productions in Paris, audiences watched graphic, practical effects involving staged mutilations, surprise murders, and other forms of shock horror. These productions are often viewed as an early version of the practical effects horror later seen in film. So these productions used large amounts of fake blood in staged violent scenes involving decapitations, acid attacks, and kind of like these crazy forms of mutilation. Much like later slasher movies, the theater became known for stories about audience members fainting during performances, with an on-site doctor reportedly available to treat them. However, while Grand Guignol helped shape shock-based horror entertainment, it was not really a direct precursor to the modern cinematic jump scare. According to horror theater expert Richard Hand, surprise works differently in live theater than it does in film. In movies, scares are usually fast and sudden, but on stage, slower tension tends to be more effective because the audience is sharing the same physical space and experience as the performers. If something happens too quickly in a live production, viewers may miss it, so theater often focuses more on a gradually building unease and anticipation. Outside of traditional theater, haunted attractions in the late 1800s also relied on concealed actors suddenly jumping out at visitors. The structure was very similar to modern-day haunted houses, where surprise and anticipation are used to make sudden scares more effective, or perhaps even modern-day immersive theater. And I will say, I went to see the Broadway musical adaptation of The Lost Boys a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Which is delightful in my opinion, but it was the first time in a long time that I'd seen anything on stage that had jump scares, and it got me. It really did have like a few effective jump scares, which was really fun because, it really feels in celebration of the film, which is such an iconic horror film, and it was cool that it was able to pull that off.
Yeah, I can't imagine a jump scare in theater, but clearly there's a lot of precedent.
Yeah. Literature also explored early forms of the jump scare. Writers such as Edgar Allan Poe and M.R. James created scenes built around mounting dread, followed by an abrupt and disturbing revelation. Without visuals or sound, readers often described having strong physical reactions to these moments. In the modern era, there is also a subcategory of a thing called internet screamer, and this is what we were talking about before, Alan. An internet screamer is a type of online image, video, or game designed to trick users with a normal-looking setup that suddenly switches, typically to a frightening image, using a face paired with a loud scream. A well-known example is The Maze, also called Scary Maze Game, created in 2004 by Jeremy Winterroud, where players guide a small square through increasingly narrow paths that force them to focus closely on the screen. Once they reach a certain point, the game suddenly cuts to a terrifying image of Reagan from The Exorcist, along with a loud scream. Another example is Kikia, which begins with simple footage of a boy in different settings before abruptly switching to a ghost image from Fatal Frame with a high-pitched scream.
Fatal Frame? I've thought about that in a long time.
Of course, video games also use jump scares all the time. Games like Resident Evil, Until Dawn, The Quarry, Daylight, and of course, Five Nights at Freddy's are great examples of this.
I was wondering if you're going to start talking about video games, because it's such a different animal when you know the jump scare is coming, but you still have to be the one to walk through the door.
Yeah, right. You're kind of like in control, even if it's virtually.
Mm-hmm.
In August 2018, a promotional video for The Nun showed a phone volume icon dropping to mute right before the title character suddenly appeared with a very loud scream. The advertisement was taken down soon after for breaching YouTube's policy against shocking or misleading content.
Uh-oh.
The jump scare has existed in some form for centuries, long before horror films brought it into mainstream popular culture, starting in ancient theater and expanding with Victorian ghost plays, haunted attractions, and Gothic literature. Artists have long understood how tension and sudden surprise can produce a strong emotional reaction. Cinema eventually refined these techniques through editing, sound design, and camera work, turning the jump scare into one of horror's most recognizable devices. Films like The Phantom of the Opera, Cat People, and later slasher films helped establish the modern structure of suspense, followed by sudden shock that continues to shape horror today. Psychologically, jump scares are effective because they tap into the body's natural startle reflex, a fast survival response designed to react to a sudden stimuli. Horror films intensify this reaction by placing audiences in a prolonged state of tension and anticipation, making unexpected sounds or images feel even more powerful. While some viewers, like me, criticize jump scares as cheap or overused, their long history and continued popularity show that they remain one of the most direct ways horror can create a physical response from an audience. Okay, so Alan, to close us out here, what do you personally think is the most effective jump scare that you can think of?
That's simple.
No?
It's in video games, specifically in VR.
Sure.
Playing Resident Evil 8. Again, you're in VR, so you are inside the haunted house full of spooky dolls that are constantly looking at you. And then you turn the corner and there's something at the top of the stairs. You're not quite sure. Is it just a shadow? Is it just an artifact? Because honestly, they use the limited VR resolution to the benefit sometimes. And then all of a sudden, this massive doll thing crawls down the stairs at lightning speeds.
No.
It is, and it's like it cries like a baby while it does it. It is so startling. I ripped off the headset.
I don't like that at all. There's been so many nights where I've been sleeping and screams from you and your friends playing Resident Evil have woken me up.
It's very spooky, but it's okay. We beat it.
I'm surprised that you say video games because you are somebody who hates haunted houses.
Yeah, I mean, right. I just won't do it.
Well, we did it last Halloween. We went up to the upstate Headless Horseman, which was like this vast outdoor haunted house experience.
Yeah, and I was very brave.
You were very brave. But is it you don't like haunted houses because of the jump scares?
I don't like it for many reasons.
All right. Well, as always, thank you all so much for being here. It was great to discuss the history of jump scares. Stay spooky, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.